Clark with the American Family Association of Indiana. I want to welcome you today and first of all wish you a very Merry Christmas this weekend. I hope you and your family have a wonderful time celebrating with family, but also the birth of our Savior Jesus Christ, in whom our faith and hope rests for America and for the world. Now, today we're going to talk about in this video, actually we're going to feature David Barton and Tim Barton talking about one of the early Christmases in America during the Revolutionary War. There's a fascinating story in here that you've probably never heard before, which is typical of David Barton tidbits, about a soldier who was wounded during the Revolutionary War and how his life changed and almost lost his life had someone not stepped up and volunteered to help our soldiers. So pay attention to that. I think you'll find that very interesting. But this is a great video about an early Christmas in America. So I hope you enjoy it today. And coming up is David and Tim Barton.
Hey guys, as we are getting ready to celebrate Christmas, and maybe you've already had some Christmas celebrations, done stuff with family, as we look back at kind of the history of Christmas in America, I think some of my favorite Christmases to look at center around some military conflicts, things that were going on, and certainly if you look back to America's first Christmas, and I'm saying this in the sense of before 1776 we hadn't separated from Great Britain, so we're really British colonists, so it was like British Christmas, so I'm not really going to count those right now. But when we separate from Great Britain, 1776, this is when we're going to have now the first American Christmas. And Christmas was a little different back then. They didn't celebrate the way we do today for various religious reasons.
And some of them didn't celebrate at all. I mean, in the New England area, up around Boston, Massachusetts, it literally was illegal to celebrate Christmas till after the Civil War. They had a law against celebrating Christmas. So yeah, we really didn't.
And for lots of religious reasons, because they thought it was commercializing religion. And so anyway, not to digress down that, although that could be an interesting conversation later. Looking back to the first Christmas, George Washington, commander of the military, is recognizing, you know, we to this point, 1776, haven't really had any victories. The men who have signed up as part of the military, their term of enlistment's pretty much up, and if they don't re-enlist, we're not going to be able to continue on with any kind of conflict with the British, and this war is going to be over. So we need to do something that will boost morale so we can get people to re-enlist in the cause. This is where you have the famous crossing of the Delaware and the Battle of Trenton that is soon to unfold.
Yeah, it was a real problem for Washington because he'd had nothing but losses all year. He'd had the loss of Kips Bay and the loss of New York and the loss of Long Island, loss, and nobody wants to join a losing army. So he says, we got to do something really aggressive. We need a victory by the end of the year. And he thinks about the fact that, well, of all the forces on the British side, the meanest, roughest, toughest, most militaristic forces are the Hessians. That's the hired mercenaries that the British have hired from Germany to come in. And Washington realizes, you know, these guys really do celebrate Christmas there. It's a big deal for them, and they drink a lot on Christmas. And so if we were to
It's a different way to celebrate Christmas, right? Sometimes it's Jesus giving presents. Some people get drunk. Not encouraging that at all, but that's apparently what the Hessians did. Convenient for Washington and his troops.
So he decides it'd be really good to attack the Hessians, and they had a garrison in Trenton, about over 1,000 troops there, and that's really a tough lot. He says we can attack them the day after Christmas because they'll probably be hungover from all their partying on Christmas, and so they make the plans. And so General Henry Knox, who's in charge of Washington's artillery, he makes the plan. We're going to cross the Delaware. We're going to take 5,400 troops. We're going to pull the cannons with us. We got horses. We got all this stuff. And he gets the logistics ready. He actually goes to what they call the Marbleheaders of Massachusetts to actually take the ships across and carry everything. And so they have a plan that we want to be across. We want to attack by 8 in the morning. So Washington says, I want to be across the river by midnight. I want to cross it. We got 12 miles to march, and we'll be ready to attack them by right at sunrise, thereabouts. And so it doesn't go the way they planned, because as they get there and start moving the boats across, there are so many ice flows in the river, so much that impedes the rafts, that by 4 o'clock in the morning, they've only got 2,400 troops across of the 5,400 they want. It's just not going the way they want.
Let's add a little context, because as people who study history, we live in Texas. And so this notion that there's ice in the water and you can't get boats across, like that's not a problem we have in Texas. generally most southern places, not an issue we have. I think probably our friends in northern states, they're like, okay, yes, we have blizzards for 7 months of the year. You get it. Like, this is not something that's normal for us. And so this thought of, yeah, well, just get in your boats and, cross over and you'll be to the other side and go do your thing. Interesting looking at the fact that we are in the middle of winter up in the New England area where incredible snowfalls, right? Big frozen icebergs, and really this is when you have pretty much all the ponds frozen. This is when people are going ice skating out on the ponds. Stuff like that's already happening. So when they go to cross the Delaware, there are massive icebergs floating down so big that actually it prevents some of their floats from going across, as the icebergs can maybe push them downstream or actually keep them from being able to go forward. So this is a major problem. If your strategy is we are going to overwhelm them by the sheer force of our numbers, right? With more than 5,000 men against 1,000, should be an easier victory. They surrender, we can cheer, yay, we won, and we'll be done and go home. Well, now if you can't get but maybe half your force across, it's going to change your battle plan pretty significantly, and it doesn't stop there with the difficulties.
No, once they get across and Washington says, look, it's 4 o'clock, I'm taking what we got, we're going, they have this 12-mile forced march. And the problem is the American troops are super undersupplied. I mean, literally, many of them had no shoes to wear. And so they literally left bloody footprints in the snow as they're moving toward Trenton to engage the enemy. And as they're going, and hopefully God's with them in this battle, and then suddenly they get a blizzard type of snow that comes in with hail, with lightning. They get, thunder ice? And so it is literally so bad that 2 of the soldiers, the American soldiers, freeze while they're marching. I mean, that's amazing that you're in the middle of marching and you freeze to death while you're moving. Yeah. And so they've got to think God's against us, except that turned out to be really providential in what happened, because the weather was so bad that the Hessians decide, nobody's attacking this weather. We're going inside. All the sentries, all the guards, everybody went in.
Yeah, nobody's dumb enough to be out in this weather. Everything's going to be safe, guys. Let's just come in by the fireplace, right? We'll kick up our heels, we'll have a drink. It'll be great, no problems. So the blizzard, that for all practical purposes, when you can't get but half your troops across the Delaware, and now the blizzard comes and it's stalling and delaying your advance, and it looks like everything that you would have wanted to happen has gone the opposite direction. As far as your military plans and tactics, this is not going well at all, but providentially, this very unfortunate series of events was something that set up pretty perfectly. So when they arrive, they're at Trenton and they show up, and while there's actually nobody out here, they're able to set up and surround the area they want to surround, not being spotted at this point. So they set up their I guess it wasn't really defensive line, maybe their attack formation,
that's right?
And so they're
Which is what you see right here. George Washington, right at the front of the troops, they're attacking the barracks over here. And so the Germans are completely oblivious to the fact that the enemy is on the grounds, that they have lined up, they're getting ready to attack, they don't even have a clue. So Washington does attack, and it is really lopsided. It's a battle that lasted 45 minutes. Now, understand that everything is a single shot back then. Everybody on both sides has a single shot. You got a bunch of farmers and shopkeepers and school teachers taking on a bunch of paid professional soldiers. So it should have been a tough fight. And as it turns out, it was a 45-minute battle. And in the entire battle, there were only 3 Americans that were wounded. None were killed at all. There were 2 killed on the march. They died marching.
2 died. Right.
2 died on the march, but not killed in the battle. And in the battle, there are 20 Hessians killed, there are 100 wounded, and 1,000 surrendered. They've just figured out we're getting hurt on this one. And there's a providential event that happens with one of the 3 that's wounded, because as they were marching, and they're trying to be quiet as they're marching, because there's a lot of loyalists around, a lot of people who are loyal to the British, that if they find out the Americans are about to attack, they'll get on a horse and go ride and tell the British. And so they're trying to be quiet as they're going down the road. And as they're going down the road, they pass one house where this dog comes out and starts barking and really sets up a ruckus, really ferocious barking. And a guy comes out and says, "What's going on? What are you doing? Who are you?" And they said, "Well, we're American." "Oh, you're Americans." Well, it turns out he's not a loyalist. He's a patriot. And he says, "Hey, I'm a surgeon, and if you're going to attack, somebody might get injured. Let me just go with you, just in case," because they didn't have medical folks with them. So he ends up going with them. And there are 3 that got wounded on the American side, and one that got wounded was a direct aide to George Washington. And he was shot, and the bullet actually severed an artery in his chest. And the surgeon being there is, I can fix that. He sticks his finger in the bullet hole and holds off the severed artery and fixes it. And it turns out the guy whose life he saved, had he not been there, that guy would have died. The guy whose life he saved was George Washington's young aide named James Monroe, who became the 5th president of the United States. So only 3 guys injured. One of them was going to be the future president of the United States. Amazing story.
Yeah, so looking at Christmas, this is why this is a really fun story, one of my favorite stories surrounding Christmases in America, because it was not an easy Christmas, but it was certainly something that if you look, I now think about some of the anti-American sentiments, and just would let you know, right? If you have anti-American sentiments, maybe you shouldn't rest too easy on Christmas night, because Americans are not above attacking you on Christmas night, showing up the next morning, ruining your next morning. But this is where, even looking back providentially, we talk so much about the providential connection of American history, and even the providence that looking sometimes you might have a scenario and you're going, man, this is terrible, right? Only half our troops get across and this blizzard happens and people are dying in the blizzard. This is literally a terrible scenario. And yet God was able to show up in that seemingly terrible scenario and work to give the Americans an incredible victory. This was part of the first Christmas in America.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that video today. The Bartons are very popular when we show them, and I always enjoy learning things I didn't know about history from them. But most of all, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas again this weekend. Hope you have a great time with your family. I also want to thank you for supporting AFA. As we enter the year end, it's always important for us to make our financial goals so that we can start off January from a position of strength, as the legislature is just a few days away, starting January 9th. It's getting very close. So your support now, your tax-deductible donation before year end is very important to us. If you can make a donation, there's a link below. But again, I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, and thank you for watching today.